All right, so about this time tomorrow night, the polls should be closing. Of course, problem being the Democrats like to keep counting until they get the results they want. We'll see what happens with that. This here is how I kind of see the map realistically. And this whole category here is technically toss up, and Trump is playing defense. The question is how motivated are the Democrats? Are they any crazier? How many Democrats who didn't vote for Hillary Clinton are going to come out and vote for Joe Biden? And how many of Democrats who voted or didn't vote last time who have defected to Trump? How many Republicans who skipped voting or voted third party last time who are now converted to be voting for Trump? How many completely new voters are voting for Trump? Now, according to a lot of the statistical polls, basically they're finding that at Trump rallies, it's something like 16.5% minimum are people who are brand new registered Republicans or people who just didn't even vote in the last election who are just coming out and saying, yeah, I like this guy. Now, conventionally, that should mean that plus the energy and 98% approval rating within the GOP, that should seal the deal for Trump. Should. But the Democrats, if you haven't noticed, over the last week, it went from being it's most likely going to be Joe Biden, and the whole map was basically blue, and they were saying, there's only, there's 10 scenarios, maybe only 2 of them Trump can win. So now the map is very, very gray. This is my map, which it's got a lot of gray if you count the pink and pale blue as gray, but not to the degree that a lot of these other places are. And what they've liked to do is they seem to put things in toss-up territory based off of basically, do you believe the skewed polls, the left-wing polls, or do you believe the aggregate polls? And if you average those out, you are going to end up favoring Biden. No matter what you do, it always favors the Democrats, even in elections that the Republicans win. Cenk Uygur, like he when he was doing his Young Turks thing, even in 2018 when he was expecting that blue wave to come, it just kind of ended up being a wash. And in fact, it would have been a total defeat had some shenanigans not occurred in Arizona and some other states, PA included, to be honest. Now, they do say when you're counting polls for particularly states like Pennsylvania, basically assume 5% is going to go to the Democrats cheating. So shave all 5%, whether that means votes that are discarded absentee-wise, like military ballots, or just, magically absentee ballots materializing. You don't get a receipt when you vote. And, for instance, in 2018, we had these new machines where we put the, you filled it out with a pen, and then you put the thing into, like, basically what looked like a fax machine, and that was supposed to take your vote. You don't get a receipt. You have no concept of what happened, which I don't like, which isn't all that different from the electric ones, but a couple of those machines broke and they need to be counted by hand. So, and then all of a sudden, basically, the Democrats completely dominated, at least my local area, when they were, having all these problems. Suddenly there's issues with the voting machines, and then all of a sudden the Democrats are pulling ahead. Very strange. Will they do the same thing this time? I don't know. Hopefully the Republicans got their act together and there's actual poll watchers and attorneys and shit ready to pounce on this nonsense. Now, some things I have in here, I'm going to focus on the gray and the pink and the blue state and the pale blue states, because most of this other stuff is not the case. I don't believe Texas is in play unless they are unbelievable level of cheating, because right now Donald Trump, he basically won a really hard fought election in Texas because of the fact that Ted Cruz was his main opposition. Ted Cruz won a really, really, really hard fought election in Texas against Beto O'Rourke in 2018, and that was millions and millions and millions of dollars from all over the country and elsewhere. Of course, there goes my. Oh wait, no, I can load it. Millions and millions and millions of dollars going into Texas to basically try to unseat him, and he won fairly handily. This time around, where it's no longer a midterm election, but where the turnout's going to be even higher, and they don't have the celebrity hype of, Beto, the savior, I don't see how the Democrats could possibly overcome the Republican advantage with how popular Donald Trump is in states like Texas, in states like Georgia, in states like South Carolina. Now, the RCP, I think they put South Carolina as a toss-up. I don't believe it's a toss-up. I believe that's likely going to go Republican. Same with Georgia. Stacey Abrams, 2018, right? I mean, they poured so much money and they had so much BS going into this election that, the fact that basically this time when the Democrats are not nearly as focused because of the fact that they have to defend all these other spots, I don't see how the Democrats could pull it together in Georgia. President Trump's just far too popular for that. He shows up, and he shows up in Florida, and people from Georgia drive down to go see him. Florida, I think RCP had it as a toss-up. No, it's not a toss-up. It leans Republican. There would have to be some serious shenanigans going on to think that that's anything but leans Republican. The entire immigrant, whether it's Venezuelan, Cuban, or from any other socialist shithole, that entire community is flatly rejecting the message of the Democrats right now, saying, no, we love America, we love capitalism, we love that this is a republic, and get this third world nonsense like stuff Kamala Harris was pushing yesterday out of here, because it's just going to basically destroy it's the stuff that destroyed the countries these people fled, and they're not dumb. They're not going to just start doing the same thing. It's not like when you let in illegals who don't understand, who just kind of wander in and then they just vote for whoever's going to give them welfare. It's a lot different in Florida because the people who got there often had to risk their lives and fight to get there. You think socialism works? Well, how many boats are going from Florida to Cuba? There ain't any boats going from Florida to Cuba. All the boats go the other direction. Same with Venezuela, same with all these other socialist shitholes. So, I think that the people who are trying to say that's a toss-up, they're trying to basically justify possible BS. PA, back to PA again. PA should be, it should be leans Republican, but it's really not. It's more of a, or I should say, should be likely Republican. It's more of a leans Republican because Trump won it last time. Biden has gone full apeshit on the energy stuff, so there's no way, basically, he's getting the western part of the state. It's just not going to happen. I'm one of my college professors who I'm Facebook friends with. He's one of the major people over at the Democrats up in Erie, and let's just say over the last couple of weeks he has had an absolute meltdown. They went from being comfortably smug and thinking and believing essentially their own propaganda to seeing that basically Trump was just showing up and absolutely just thousands and thousands and thousands of people. The energy comments for Biden, all this other stuff, they were having an absolute meltdown. And he's not well. I'll have to check on him after the election. But seeing that from within the DNC itself makes me pretty confident that basically things are not going the way they want them to go in Pennsylvania. So it's going to take some serious cheating to try to basically stretch this out. I think there's a 50-50 chance that we know on election night whether Pennsylvania has gone for Donald Trump or not. I do not think unless there's some major cheating going on, they would possibly be able to call it for Biden within that amount of time. And I think the best they can hope for is for it to be close enough for them to say that, oh no, we're allowed to count for another 6 days and then get tied up with attorneys and stuff. That's I think the best they can hope for. Jersey is a leans Democrat. And the reason why I say it's a leans Democrat is because basically the problem with Jersey Republicans is that they are easily betrayed. They weren't huge fans of everything, for instance, Chris Christie did in his last term. Chris Christie didn't make the gun laws any better. He really didn't improve taxes all that much, and he really didn't stand up to the Democrats on the school stuff, right? He was more of just a big guy. He's an executive. He just had the Jersey attitude. He was likable, and the moderates kind of liked him. But in general, he didn't really light a fire for Republicans, and Democrats were basically able to exploit that and get their man in. Their man who's in right now is right now throwing people who, Jersey gym owners in jail because they just want to open up. Jersey's in full lockdown, and the Democrats there are scared to death if they believe the propaganda, and the Republicans are motivated and pissed off. And they would love nothing more than to have basically Jersey's 14 votes be the thing that puts Trump over the edge, or at the very least make it so that it's so close to call where basically Biden doesn't even get his points until basically Wednesday. Chris Christie won in New Jersey, and Chris Christie's a big personality. And Donald Trump is in a lot of ways, he does have that persona that people in New Jersey liked. We'll see. We'll see what happens. Now, one of the bigger problems is that you've got people fleeing New York heading into Jersey. And it's really not all that much better. Same thing with people from New York fleeing into PA. Question is, did they register to vote in PA or did they register to vote in New York, right? New York, because of basically New York City being an absolute complete Democrat lockdown where they just basically farm the votes and go door to door and just, especially with this mail-in ballot stuff, I don't see with the level of cheating occurring in New York that there's any chance of basically Trump taking the state. That said, I think if all things were fair, you've got enough, pretty much Albany and New York City are what have voted basically Cuomo into power, right? And if those two, and I should say Rochester also, if those three cities are pissed off enough at Cuomo for the way he handled the pandemic, for the lockdowns, for his smugness, for just seeing the embarrassment of Bill de Blasio, and they really want to punish the Democrats, they might, one, stay home. Two, they might actually, the people who are voting for Trump are actually feeling really good and they're going to go vote for Trump. And Biden had some events in Rochester. And I was like, why? Why are you having events in Rochester? New York should be solid blue. Well, if it actually is solid blue, he never should have even needed to stop by other than just doing like celebrity bullshit in New York City. So the fact that there's kind of this weird, we better prop up Cuomo as best we can, even though he's not the nominee, basically pop up his popularity, try to make him look as good as possible. I think they're propagandizing for that because I think they're actually worried about Republican turnout in New York. The whole point of, let's just say, the thing with New York is that the Republicans, they would just prefer to be splitting off from the state, and I think if you gave them a chance to vote, they probably would vote to do so. But they always get pretty much completely crushed by New York City, and even if they all came out and they all voted, there's still so much in terms of like percentage of people voting because of the shenanigans in New York City that there's no chance for them to overcome what's going on. They never feel like they're represented, so they usually just stay home and just hide their AR-15 from the governor. That's kind of what they do. But if this time, if they're pissed off enough at Cuomo and de Blasio for all this lockdown and COVID nonsense, they might come out in force. And it's not that I think New York is necessarily in play, but I think we may see it closer than we expect. That, or they'll do the thing like they do in LA and they do in New York, where they sure up that the Democrat wins the popular vote by just basically ballot harvesting, and then so that they can say that, oh look, I won the popular vote. Illinois, it's largely the same thing. Pretty much the whole state is dominated by Chicago. Rural Illinois is very much Trump country, but the Chicago machine will just fabricate the votes if they need the votes. And that's why the Democrats essentially dominate in Illinois. Then again, maybe the people of Chicago, maybe they're pissed off. Maybe it's really cold tomorrow and they're just like, I don't like Biden enough to really get off my ass to go vote for him. Maybe they saw the violence and the lockdowns. Maybe they really are really hating on Lori Lightfoot right now. They might just not show up to vote for the Democrats, or they might actually show up and vote for Trump. Maybe. And the question, again, will be, can the cheating, that 5% that the Democrats get in states like PA, Illinois, Wisconsin, Michigan, Minnesota particularly, will Trump's victory be enough to overcome that And I don't mean that there has to be that many more Republicans voting, but there has to be that many. There has to be basically enough Republicans voting over what to win, and enough Democrats staying home saying, you know what, I don't like Trump, but this Biden's got dementia. I'm not about that. Virginia. I mean, I was down there the other day. I was in Southern Virginia at the North Carolina border. I don't know why on earth. They like to put Virginia in solid blue, right? I don't think it's solid blue. I think what's solid blue is basically the DC metro area. But you exit that, you are in Trump country. It is Trump signs everywhere. It is people in MAGA hats. It is a whole other area, and to the point where I think that probably should just all become part of the DC metro area, and then the rest of Virginia should be left alone, because it's kind of ridiculous. Like, this whole state has been completely the values of the people in the Metro DC area and the values of the people in the rest of the state are polar opposite, and they probably should either split, or basically DC should absorb a lot of this stuff. DC, that's obviously going to go for Democrats, because it's like a it's the same kind of shenanigans basically, but they're gonna own that. Because they always do. Maryland, drove through Maryland. I mean, there were some Trump stuff, but there was people on the bridges saying, "Oh, save democracy, vote for Biden." I actually saw some energy in Maryland and Delaware when I was passing through for Biden, and that's the only place I've seen it outside of maybe like Doylestown, PA. And it's gonna, I don't think these are gonna flip. I'm sure the people living down on the coast and the people living in the rural areas and the farms and stuff, I'm sure they would love for Republicans to take over their state, or at the very least for Trump to actually get the points. But it's probably not going to happen. So I would say this is safe. Delaware, it's safe. They're going to vote for they vote for him as a senator for how long? I'd be really surprised if they voted against him. Delaware is kind of it's just its own little super, like, basically it's like Wilmington kind of controls the entire outcome for the rest of the state, and I think that's a shame. I feel like when your population is split like that you should probably divvy up your electoral votes, like the way Maine does it, or the way Nebraska does it. But as long as the Democrats control it, that's never going to happen. Maine, I think this is a solid toss-up in terms of who's going to actually win the total number. It's probably going to be the Democrats. They are getting at least 1 point out of there. But because of the energy of Trump's base, I'm going to say he's probably got a point out of it too. This is a toss-up, but I think the way Maine's going to say what puts Maine in the toss-up territory is if it's conclusively Pennsylvania's won, Indiana's won, Michigan's won, Wisconsin's won. If that's the case, then flip a coin on Maine. Likely. This one here is probably my least solid prediction in terms of Maine, because in terms of these numbers here, because I just don't. I'm not 100% sure what's going on in Maine. I just am kind of looking at the numbers, and I think it's probably more of a toss-up than I think a lot of the pollsters are giving it. But I don't think I will actually change this one to leans Democrat. Because I think it's there's a lot of things that have to come into play to make Maine a toss-up, so I think that's fair. Vermont, it's likely going to be for the Democrats. They keep electing Sanders, so they've got no problem with old white socialists. They're probably going to vote for, which is a shame. I feel bad for Styx Hexenhammer, right? I mean, he loves Vermont, but he's literally spending time in Amsterdam to get away from Vermont's insanity. The Democrats are that crazy. At least he can get drugged out of his mind in Amsterdam to deal with their policies, to forget for a little while. But Vermont, total mess. Let's see what we got here. New Hampshire, I think New Hampshire is likely to go Republican. The primary, based on the primary turnout in New Hampshire, I don't. If the primary model in such a primary focused state like New Hampshire is in play, which a lot of people who basically go things off of what are the voter turnout for the primaries compared to, and in some states more people Republicans turned out to vote for Trump in an inconsequential primary than turned up to vote for Joe Biden or the competitor, like Democrats total. And when you see those kind of numbers, I think that something like New Hampshire is very much likely to go Republican, just because of the energy alone. I mean, I've got right wing friends who moved up there. I think he's working for 6 Hour actually, and that's they are slowly getting more and more red, just from people kind of the libertarian left is kind of coming back around, and they're kind of as the Republican Party absorbs more libertarians, they become a lot more palatable. For most part, New Hampshire just wants their gay marriages and guns, and the Democrats don't want to deliver those things. So I think New Hampshire's starting to slightly change. Again, cheating. I don't know. I'm not familiar with the. I see the cheating in PA. I'm not familiar how it happens in New Hampshire. I hope it doesn't. Maybe it still does. Ohio, I don't know why people have that as a toss-up. Trump won Ohio by 8 points last time, and he's even more popular now than he was before in Ohio. Their governor, he's not as popular, but Trump himself, they're going to show up and they're going to vote for Trump in massive numbers, and even if it's just despite the lockdowns. And I don't see how Ohio is anything but pretty much solid Trump. Michigan, again, it should be leaning towards Trump, but there is a lot of shenanigans going on. And I don't know how strong the Democrat apparatus in Detroit and Lansing and all these other major cities in Michigan are. If the Democrat apparatus is in full fabricate votes mode, yeah, Michigan, of course, it would normally basically be locked for the Democrats. But in this case, Trump won it last time. He's more popular than he was before. And Joe Biden, you got to remember, Michigan went for Trump because of the results of the Biden-Obama administration. Those people aren't going to come out and then vote for Joe Biden after having rejected Barack Obama by voting for Trump last time. I mean, it was because Hillary Clinton, again, a remnant of the Obama administration. So I don't see this. I should say, I think if the votes are counted, I don't see how Michigan's going to go back to blue. It just doesn't make any sense. Again, with cheating, we don't know. We don't know what's going to happen. Same thing with Wisconsin, right? Wisconsin, Trump won Wisconsin because he actually showed up to campaign. He's going to be, I think he's going to be there tomorrow, actually. And, awesome, cool. Wisconsin outside of Milwaukee is very red, but we see what happens in like 2018, for example. Scott Walker, very popular governor, did a great job. The Dems tried to organize basically a recall of him. The Republicans got pissed off, came out, voted for him again to save him. And then when he got brought up again in 2018, all of a sudden, magically, the Democrats had materialized the votes they needed. That's a problem. And that makes me think that basically if the apparatus that got basically their governor elected in 2018 is what's in play in Wisconsin, they're basically going to be guessing, do they need to cheese the numbers 3% to win, like they needed to do to beat Scott Walker, or do they need to cheese the numbers 7%, 5%? And I think we're going to see a lot of nonsense in Wisconsin. And the problem being when you have a Democrat governor, Democrat attorney general, for instance, Minnesota, Michigan, a lot of these places, you have a very, very, very high chance of essentially none of this being pursued. Josh Shapiro already came out. He's our Pennsylvania's AG, and he basically just said, "Well, if Biden doesn't win the Biden doesn't win the state, then we're going to sue the Trump campaign." He's already basically called the state for Biden. He has no basis for that. In fact, they actually. For instance, my friend from Erie, he wouldn't be having an absolute meltdown right now if it was by any means secure for Biden. But they're going to do stuff like that, and if they have opportunities to essentially stop counts, throw stuff away, fabricate votes, suddenly find a trunk of votes like they did in Minnesota when Al Franken got elected. Oh, we know it was close, and we just happened to find a trunk full of votes, and that put it was like 100 votes or something, and that put Al Franken over the edge. And the Republicans didn't fight it, which I think is pathetic. They should have said, no, this is nonsense, and they never should have conceded. And I think I guess they thought that it was more of a legal pain or something, or that it wasn't worth fighting. This time, Trump has essentially signaled, no, the attorneys are going to come out in force, and if you guys try to fuck around like you did with Al Franken's election, or with in Arizona with what's her face? Oh my God, I want to say McChrystal, but that's the general's name. You know her name, the blonde-haired one with like the weird boots. If they try to screw around with the numbers and the voting and like flipping stuff after the fact, they're gonna get hit with full force of the basically attorneys, and basically Trump voters aren't going to accept that nonsense. So. In a lot of ways, the Democrats, by planting the seeds of, this is going to be, we're not going to know the results, means that if it's close and they want to basically do some bullshit in Arizona or Minnesota or PA or Jersey or Michigan or Wisconsin, like after the fact, or Nevada, or Georgia as well, they're going, basically, Republicans are already primed with the attorneys ready to go fight back. For instance, Bush took Florida. Because basically Al Gore, they kept wanting to do recount, and just, they just were going to keep doing that until they got a Al Gore result, whether it meant by new ballots were discovered, or just, the people counting them just eventually, because what you do is you look at the Chads and you say, okay, this is a vote, and then this is inconclusive, and you throw that one away, and people vote on it, and basically you get enough people, you do that enough times, eventually you're going to end up with a result that's in a race that close, where maybe Al Gore will actually take the win. So they wanted to keep doing the recounts over and over and over again until they got what they wanted. Now, Florida had a AG at the time that said, no, this is stupid, and they took it to the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court said, no, you can't. I mean, they've counted the votes 2-3 times already. You can't just keep fabricating votes out of nowhere and saying that, like, you don't. It basically, like, it's up to Florida to make this decision, and the apparatus in Florida said the election's been called for George Bush, but they never let that shit go. I mean, you still will hear about Florida was taken, and since that nonsense, Florida has just gotten more and more red over time. And it's just because the Democrats play games in places like Florida, they play games in places like PA, and the Republicans see it. And basically, if the Republican apparatus in Florida, while not great, it had the same corruption issues that the Democrats had. It actually was much, much, much more robust, particularly with Cuban Americans stepping up. Man, you want to see people fight for America, man. Cubans who have gotten away from Castro, and they come here, it's like when you see somebody who's like converted to to be a born again Christian or something. Like they're so thankful and they're so passionate. I say freaking, they're probably the best leaders we have, to be honest, in terms of GOP leadership. It's the Cuban American leaders down here. They're the best people we have, in my opinion. But you'll see that in PA, the GOP's leadership structure is god awful. The Democrats cheat all the time, and there's not even Republicans there to even watch the polls. It's a mess. But Western PA is different than Eastern PA, so maybe these guys have gotten their act together. I know Southeast PA has not. Literally, we have one Democrat in our household. She will be voting Trump, but we do have a Democrat in our household, so we get all the Democrats' mail, their flat mailers and stuff, and basically we get stuff from every Democrat, all the Democrats. It's just a shitstorm of mail for local Dems, national Dems, everything, and then on for a Republicans, we get pretty much Trump, and then usually we get like a pamphlet from one of the GOP organizations. And that's kind of how it is. Like I couldn't even tell you some of the positions that are being run for that have like a Republican candidate. Like I don't know who's I don't think we're electing mayor this year, but like I didn't even know who the Republican for mayor was last time. I just showed up and I was like I've heard nothing, and sure enough it was there was a name there with like two other names. It was like, well, I don't know who these people are now, and we got somebody who's a socialist in charge, and that's the Republicans in my area. They just give up the ship basically without a fight. Nevada, there's so much cheating in Nevada that I don't think I don't think Trump's going to be able to. I don't think a Republican can overcome that. But it's still kind of in the toss-up territory, because I was just say this is going to move to the toss-up if, like, for instance, Minnesota gets called early in the night for Trump, or Wisconsin, Michigan, like this whole area, like the Rust Belt starts going red. Then just look at Nevada, because Nevada may go either way. Probably going to be blue. Colorado, probably going to be blue. California, there's some people saying, oh, California's going to go red. Every Republican in California is going to come out and vote for Donald Trump. We know that they're motivated, they're pissed off, and then what they don't want is they don't want to hear the whole basically popular vote BS, because the Democrats just basically farmed votes in Los Angeles. They don't want California to be the reason the rest of the country hates, basically the Democrats. The rest of the country hates the Democrats, and they look at California as basically being responsible for the Democrats, because the California having this massive population and trying to bully all the other states is the reason why, the Democrats tried to say things like, oh, we got to get rid of the Electoral College and whatnot. And Republicans in California, they're so sick of it just being solid blue, especially with the ballot harvesting. They just, a lot of times they just stay home, because they're like, what's the point? Like these 55 points, they're going to the Democrats. There's something we can do. But now that the Democrats have made the popular vote such an issue, that's probably motivated and pissed off enough Republicans to come out to actually see if they can, get that a little closer. Now, Newsom, he's been draconian with his lockdowns, and he's been ridiculous with the fires, unbelievably negligent, right? But Democrats in California don't care. It's oppress me more, daddy. They don't care. Go ahead, be friends with them on Facebook, follow them. The Democrats in California, they are in total la-la land. They think that they have moral superiority over everybody else. They think that, the fires that are caused by poor forest management are just results of climate change. They don't understand why, they think it's totally normal and okay for there to be rolling blackouts and water shortages when you live next to a damn ocean and you're actually one of the most energy-rich states in the union, and they're having blackouts. It's, and then not only are they going to have blackouts, that they're going to say, oh yeah, we're going to have everybody use electric cars too. It's unbelievably oppressive, but the Democrats, they love it. They're going to cause basically this state to collapse. And, we'll cross that bridge when we get there, but California, you guys are pretty much screwed. The only chance they have is essentially that they split off into like 2 or 3 states, like maybe the Oregon, like the state of Jefferson they're talking about, basically where they're getting rid of, or I should say, I forget what it is, whether the new state would be Jefferson or basically Portland and like the metro area, and then like Northern California rural area, and the rest of Oregon will be like one state. And one of them said, oh, well, just let this part of Oregon just be part of Idaho. That would probably be better, because the people in this part of Oregon have a lot more in common with Idaho than they do with anybody in Portland. Washington State, largely the same kind of thing. I mean, Grand Idaho, if Idaho expanded all the way here and then just the left coast kept their like cities like Portland and Seattle and stuff, probably everybody would be happier, because these people wouldn't have to live under basically the left-wing boot, and then these people wouldn't have to pretend that they're not socialists so that they can, not piss off the people in the sticks. I'm just saying, there is a reason we're set up as a republic, and they should really start thinking about splitting off. I mean, West Virginia split off from Virginia last time there was this much civil unrest. That was because of the Civil War, and it was basically West Virginia was the Republican North that said no to slavery, and regular Virginia was the Democrat South that said, okay, we like slavery. And when there was going to be a split, basically they said, no, we're going to form our own state. And you notice how after the war was over, these two, they didn't unite again. They didn't say, okay, I guess we're going to all be one Virginia. No, they understood that there was a fundamental difference here in the way these two groups of people were approaching things. And, that's what happened. So, that's my map. I'm let's see, let's refresh. This is basically ideally. If everything goes swimmingly, Trump's going to hit that 315, and we're going to feel really great. And then, if he breaks that would just be unbelievable. That would be amazing. But this is what the news is telling us. This is the RCP, right? Some of these I reject flatly. Texas, Florida. But let's watch these numbers here. So they're saying 216 solidly for Biden, right? Okay. Let's pretend Biden gets all of that. Where's Trump got to win? Well, he's going to be taking Texas. And he's going to be taking Florida. And now the gap doesn't look so bad, does it now, right? Now it's more of like, oh, there's just a couple swing states. Is he going to take Georgia? Yes, he's going to take Georgia, right? This is more of kind of what the map actually looks like. If you want to actually include everything that is Ohio, he's taking Ohio. So this is more of actually what it looks like. And what Biden needs to do is he needs to take PA, Michigan, Wisconsin. He needs to take Arizona, North Carolina, Pennsylvania. This is why there's so much fighting in Pennsylvania right now. I don't think we're going to know what Pennsylvania's deal is. But basically, Trump wants to hit that 270. He's basically where he needs his calls. He needs Arizona, which we might not know till later in the night. And 270 to win. Iowa. Iowa. Duh. That's going to be Republican. I don't know why they're putting that in the toss-up. The Democrats' primary turnout in Iowa was pathetic, really pathetic in terms of numbers. And Trump's turnout, despite not even campaigning yet, I believe he had more voters than the Democrats had even turn up. So I don't know why they're putting that in the toss-up. I think Iowa's going to be solid. But all right, so now look what's going on here. All right, what later in the night we're probably we're not going to know, but this is where everybody's going to be looking is right here, and then certain things like North Carolina going that can basically be like, oh, there's the sign, right? Maine, let's just say that extra point, right? And then now this is what we're looking at. And then it's just these. And this is why last time, basically, they called it for Pennsylvania, and then that was it, right? But let's go back to toss-up, right? But all of a sudden, certain other networks didn't want to call Pennsylvania, but then all of a sudden, they called Wisconsin. And it was like, oh shit. Nebraska went. I think that actually went full GOP last time. That or there was another point somewhere in the mix, right? Boom, that was the 270. And then they were like, well, these don't even matter. These could all go, they could mess with these numbers all they want, and it still doesn't matter because Biden can't reach what he needs to reach. So just take a look at this map, though. And this is why I think that all of a sudden the polls and the betting, they're suddenly flipping, right? This is let's pretend, let's give Biden Pennsylvania. We'll give him Minnesota. We'll give him Michigan, right? Look at this map now. Look at this map. What is Trump? What does he have to do? He's got to also win Wisconsin, right? I'm sorry. He's got to also win Wisconsin. That would flip it, and then not lose anything else, right? He's got to also win Nevada, and that still doesn't even quite get him there. And it's Montana, they got leans. I think that's pretty much going for Trump. But like this isn't good. That basically he's depending on Wisconsin going his way. This Michigan has to go his way. Minnesota has to go his way. Pennsylvania has to go his way, right? Because even if all this other stuff's in the bag, this actually puts Biden in an unbelievably defensive position. So let me refresh the map here, and I'll eliminate what I think are not toss-ups. This is not a toss-up. Texas is not a toss-up. Florida is not a toss-up. Georgia is not a toss-up. South Carolina is not a likely. Iowa is not a toss-up. Ohio is not a toss-up. Right? This is where we're looking. These are the points we're looking at, and 6 here for Nevada. I mean, Nevada somehow goes for Trump. I mean, that's going to be an even bigger nail in the coffin. That's where people say, oh, there might be an actual Trump landslide. Well, that would involve him taking Nevada, somehow taking Oregon, taking Maine, taking New Hampshire. Like, and that's the other thing. It's funny with New Hampshire. New Hampshire's like, they should be feeling really important right now because yeah, they don't have a lot of votes, but look what that does to the mix. New Hampshire goes red. That changes things a lot, right? That means that basically Biden getting his Nevada, all of a sudden that's not such a guarantee anymore for him. North Carolina, it doesn't even have to be called, and we're going to be really looking at this map. So this is why you're seeing the campaigning here, because if Biden doesn't get his Minnesota, right? If he doesn't get Minnesota, and let's pretend New Hampshire's a toss-up, and Nevada, let's keep that in the toss-up thing, right? This is the map he's looking at. That's not really good for Biden. It's really not. Now, I'm saying this can go any way because we don't know how the cheating is going to be. We don't know how the stuff, the counting is going to be. Anything can kind of happen tomorrow, and that's kind of what makes it so scary. But unlike last time, where basically if we were looking at the Hillary map, let's say this is the election results, right? But I can't change it. So that was the results. But let's take a look at what they thought Hillary was going to get, right? They thought she was going to Indiana, definitely. I don't think Indiana was one of them. Illinois, they knew she was going to get. They thought she was going to get Wisconsin. They thought she was going to get Minnesota, which I think she did. She did last time. They assumed she would get Iowa. Texas. Some people did say it would go blue, but we knew that wasn't. They thought she was going to win Florida. They thought that Georgia was a toss-up. They thought North Carolina was going to go blue. Virginia, they knew she was going to get that. Arizona, they threw that in the toss-up. Nevada, they said that was solidly blue. Let's see where else we're at. North Dakota, Nebraska, these were more of... I actually don't even remember what they said that they were going to call those. And then Ohio, they thought was going to go for her. Michigan, right? So this was the map that they thought... This is why they thought, okay, this is what it's looking like for Trump. How could he overcome this? He's going to have to flip Ohio. He's going to have to flip Pennsylvania. He's going to have to flip Iowa. He's going to have to flip Florida. He's going to have to win Arizona. He's going to have to win North Carolina. And then just as that was happening in the night, people pretty much realized, like, oh shit. And then when the final calls were made, it was basically Wisconsin, Michigan, PA. Once these states were won, they knew it was completely insurmountable. The rest of the map did not matter at that point because we knew where it was going to end. So, and he ended up with three something. So I'm not even hitting all of them. I think he won one last time. So I'm missing stuff. Georgia. I don't want to forget Georgia. So yeah, there's your 305, right? So it's the cheating. I am worried about the cheating. I'm not worried about enthusiasm for Trump. I'm not worried about enthusiasm for Biden because there's only hatred for Trump. There is no enthusiasm for Biden. But they're going to play with the numbers. We're going to see major attorney nonsense. We're going to see every stop up in being every attorney in PA and Florida basically jockeying for stuff. They're not going to want to call Nevada. They're not going to want to call Arizona. All right, so last thing, let's do the Democrats don't want to call the state, and it causes it causes gridlock, right? What we could be looking at. I still don't think that's likely. Let's just pretend New Mexico stays the way it is. They're not going to want to call that. They're going to argue. I think they'll lose in Georgia. They're not going to call Georgia. They're going to pretend that they're not going to want to call Florida, but I think that's unlikely. They're not going to want to call Wisconsin. They're not going to want to call Michigan. Yeah, I just did those backwards. They're not going to want to call Pennsylvania. I think Pennsylvania is where the Democrats are going to focus on not calling because PA, since of where it is, it gets called first. And if they can prevent PA from being called for Donald Trump, at basically in the night, they can drag this out. They're not going to want to call, probably, they will call Massachusetts. They might call Massachusetts for Biden, and then it may end up flipping later. Maine, they're going to want to call that for, if it goes for Trump, they won't call it, but they're going to want to call it for Biden as soon as they can. So this will be what we're looking at. All this bullshit, they're going to want to keep counting forever until they get the results they want. And this is the whole, like, oh my God, societal breakdown, riots. Yeah, this is what we're looking at. This is the holdups, and the holdups are going to be done by attorneys. So, all right, I've gone on long enough. Hopefully you guys can sleep well and get out there and vote for Donald Trump and Mike Pence, because the other side are communist. There's no nice way to put it. Joe's got dementia, and then Kamala apparently is a communist. She said it herself. That, or she's pandering to them, which is even worse in some ways. Yeah, let's go out there. Let's crush them. Let's if you're in Florida, get out there in person and vote. Georgia, get out there in person and vote. Arizona, get out there in person and vote. North Carolina, get out there in force and vote. I don't know why they think South Carolina is leaning one way, leaning Republican. It doesn't make any sense that they would go to Biden. If you're in Wisconsin and you're Republican, get out there. PA, get out there. PA, there's such that focus on PA, because even if these are all technically too close to call, or they're playing games with that stuff, PA, that puts Trump over the line. They call PA early in the night. It doesn't matter whether this is here or whether some of these, or whether they go back and they say, okay, well, we're going to move North Carolina back into the toss-up. Because you see this here, yeah, they're not at 270, but this is a very clear, basically, okay, Trump's going to get his points somewhere, because then he would have to lose all 5 of these, and that's so unlikely, particularly if he takes a state like Pennsylvania. So they call PA early in the night. Boom, Trump has won the election. It'll be a lot like how it was last time, only hopefully more drastic, hopefully more direct. Like Ohio called much earlier in the night. Florida called much earlier in the night than typical. Texas should be called, obviously. I would hope, but the Texas Democrats, they're convinced that they're going to somehow turn the state blue or purple. And it's like, other than cheating, I don't know how you guys are going to do that, because you fundamentally, you want to turn Texas into California. That can't be popular in California. Here's good luck to the Republicans in freaking Hawaii. Maybe even if they come close, that'll be amazing, because they're super motivated in Hawaii. And maybe because Tulsi Gabbard is so popular and she basically absolutely annihilated Harris and Biden, maybe Hawaii will actually go red. That would be wild if it did. So good luck to the Republicans up there. But, it's Democrat dominated, and, again, a few major cities, and then surrounding, dominating, dictating to the farms. That's how most of these states run. That's how PA runs. That's how a lot of these places run, particularly the blue states. Colorado, right? You think the mountain people in the Rockies are, Democrats? No. But Denver, Boulder, you can't overcome that when there's just a mechanism there. It's just that much easier to get. Think of it this way: if you're campaigning door to door and you're in the country, you got to walk hundreds of yards sometimes to get from one place to another. Wonderful, right? They might be supportive of you. But in a city, you just have to campaign, you might just walk a matter of feet to get to the next front door to be able to, extort a ballot from somebody, as the Dems do. So here's hoping that the map looks like this, and it looks like this extremely quickly. Because if it does not, we are going to be in for a world of hurt. We're in for hurt. Antifa's going to freak out regardless of what happens. But if we have a solid Trump win and we know tomorrow night for sure, okay, Trump has the mandate, the Dems can get their autistic screeching out of the way. We can deal with the Antifa, we can deal with the insurrectionists and all that nonsense, and then we can actually get on with our lives. Because, Jesus, the drawing out all the, yeah, let's say Democrat, right? Drawing out the fight to be in the courts over a couple of different. It's not going to end well. It's not going to end well because then nobody will recognize the legitimacy of the election. Right now, the Democrats, they don't recognize the legitimacy because they don't like the Electoral College. They think it's just, they think it should be popular vote. Well, Trump, if he wins this time, this well in the evening, he's probably also going to get the popular vote, and then the Democrats can just shut the hell up, and we can actually, have some sort of progress, and then they can maybe admit that, or basically they're going to have to say either, 55% of the population are white supremacists, or maybe they're wrong. And hopefully the cooler heads will push the maybe we're wrong narrative, and the Democrats will actually get their act together. Because, this insanity, this talk about, putting Republicans in re-education camps for electing Trump, like, we can't reward this going forward. And it's going to turn into a shooting war if we don't have some sort of definitive answer. I hope to God some Democrat gets a conscience who's going to be trying to bring across a lawsuit that they know is nonsense just to try to get a Dem in. And I hope that they go, you know what, this is probably really bad for the country. Let's not bring this lawsuit. But we don't know. We'll find out what happens. 47 Trump 40. Yeah, I don't know about that, guys. I don't know. Yeah, 49 point. Not really. Not really. So, all right, that's all. Catch you guys later.